All right, so on to pop culture news and non-issues. This week, Beyonce apparently dropped a new album. I've quit keeping up with Beyonce. I feel like she just drops albums a lot, and I kind of don't pay that much attention anymore. But apparently she dropped a new album, and the song, first song off it was called Heated, and one person on Twitter got heated, and it has sparked a whole controversy over this song now. So basically, to my understanding, she used the phrase spaz in her song. A single activist, a single person on Twitter then came out and said that feels like a slap in the face to them, the disabled community, and the progress they tried to make with Lizzo. Guess I'll just keep telling the whole industry to do better until ableist slurs disappear from music. And in response, Beyonce is editing her song?
Yeah, she literally
Am I right? Okay. I've never heard that used as an ableist slur. And I will say this. I've spent a lot of time around these communities that I've literally been in rooms where they're dissecting a paragraph and they're just finding issues within it. And I'm like, I don't think anybody in the real world thinks that that's a slur, and you're like making it a slur and actually like making an issue where there's not an issue to begin with. Nobody's even thinking about the disability community or disabled community with that terminology until you start to apply it.
I think that like if you go way back, the word term spaz originated with spastic, which was related to like cerebral palsy and other things. But if that's it's like that's not the connotation anymore, right? It's just an everyday word in use. And I think that like the actual number of people harmed or offended by this language can be counted on one hand, right? And it's the real struggles that disabled people go through every day in their lives. This is probably so far removed where they're like, well, you know, I don't have access to a bunch of things in my community, and I've struggled to find a job, and I live on a fixed income because I'm on disability, and so I can't afford things because of inflation. Oh, and that Beyonce song is really keeping me up at night. Of course not. And so I think it's absurd, but then what happens is one activist basically pulls a stunt like this, and then all of a sudden the media, so The Guardian, parrots it. And then we have this statement from this disability activist organization, Scope. Here we are again, not long after ableist language from Lizzo, who also had the term spaz and removed it from one of her songs. Beyonce's new album features an ableist slur not once, but twice. Disabled people's experiences are not fodder for song lyrics. This must stop. And I'm like, do these people listen to music? On the long list of messed up things in songs all the time, the denigration of women, violence, talking about killing police, the word faggot is used all the time in rap and hip hop and all these things. And I actually, I don't love that sometimes, but even then I don't think it's necessarily such a big deal like they're making this out to be. And it's far more explicit in a negative connotation than the term spaz. I think it's really revealing that all the media outlets, when it's really a slur, for example, the N-word, media outlets, when they report on it, won't say it. They'll say the N-word. But all of them wrote out spaz. So it's like, you know, it's really not that bad. They're just upset over this because they need to call attention to themselves. They need to project onto the world that their problems aren't within their control. It's all about what other people are somewhere failing to validate them enough, and that's why they're not happy. And so I think that's what this is all about, honestly.
I'm sorry, I just actually read the connotation in our notes, and she says spazzing on that ass.
Yes.
Like, it's just so ridiculous. Like, this makes me think of that when I was in high school. The Black Eyed Peas literally had like a #1 song that was called "Let's Get Retarded." Like, I could understand people saying like, "All right, like let's not do that." Yeah, it's like, okay, like let's not do that. That's not cool. But like, this is just such a stretch, and I feel like there's a significant number of people who just sit around waiting for something to be offended about or something to feel superior about. Like, and I would notice this. It was so funny when I was doing some mental health care work, because there's a lot of this in that, where one person in the room would be like, so I had written this like paragraph about people who suffer from mental illness. It was a lobbying document. People who suffer from mental illness, blah, 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 blah. And there was one person who was like, well, actually, we no longer like to say that people with mental illness suffer. It's diminishing and makes it seem like they can't overcome things. And everyone in the room was like, Oh, yeah. And like started editing their papers like, oh, yeah. But like nobody thought that until this person said that. And I'm like, I, as somebody with mental illness, like definitely don't feel that way. I do suffer. It sucks. Having anxiety is a terrible lot to bear in life. And like, that's not offensive to me, but you just want to be able to get on your high horse
and then
and
everyone
be like,
just
no, actually.
because no one wants to be accused of being a bad guy or called names. And that's what bothered me about this. It's not that some idiot on Twitter got mad and media parroted it. It's that Beyonce caved. So according to reporting by my friend Liz Wolfe over at Reason, her agent has announced that they'll be removing the reference in the song, and they'll be literally editing it. And I thought that Liz had some good... she took this very seriously, and I'm going to try to read her argument without laughing. Disabled people's experiences, in quotes, are not being used as fodder for song lyrics. Quote unquote, spazzing on that ass does not reference a person with cerebral palsy having spasticity, muscle stiffness that hinders mobility. In parts of the Anglosphere, the word spaz is seen as a terrible slur, but in America, where Beyonce is from, it refers to freaking out, moving crazily, becoming overly excited, or possibly something failing to function properly. You can see how that, and this is all Liz, how that meaning evolved from the slur, and you can see why it would aggravate some listeners, but it has lost those connotations for many people who use it. And this is the key part. If these activists are really concerned about the harm the word does, which seems more harmful? Constantly reminding people of the term's origins or letting it continue to drift away from its original connotations? I thought that was a really good point. It's like, you're actually making it more of a slur when no one's thinking of it as a slur by insisting that it is a slur.
Yes.
The whole thing's so counterproductive.
Yes, and also I think in saying that it's a slur, like you continue to actually be diminishing towards that community.
It's infantilizing.
Yeah, it actually is like trying to make it sound like, oh, I'm such a victim. I need you to come in and save me and like protect me from these languages or words that describe my conditions. It's just stupid. Like, I don't know. People need to get a grip. And this is one of those things where I just think there's so many big problems in the world. There's so many things that actually are harmful, especially to people in the disability community. Like, I have a friend who's in a wheelchair who frequently talks about the fact that she can't travel to certain cities because they still don't have just basic things like wheelchair ramps to get into buildings. Like on Broadway, she can't go see a lot of Broadway shows in New York City because they put historic overlays on the theaters and they don't have ramps. Like, these are things that actually hurt this community.
No, the Beyonce song is really keeping her up at night.
Exactly. I think it's just a waste of resources and time and energy, and these people are insufferable and need to go away and leave everybody else alone and get a hobby and let us actually, the adults in the room, continue to fix the real problems in the world. So I'm not surprised Beyonce caved. She's sort of a flake of a cultural icon. She doesn't really stand for much of anything, but whatever. I mean, I think this is a silly controversy, but unfortunately, until people stop like caving to this kind of thing and giving it the time of day, these people will continue because they're desperate for attention.